Hello and welcome to the podcast According to Sci-Faith, where we discuss topics revolving around the compatibility of science and faith. I'm Joshua Göcking and you're listening to According to Sci-Faith. Episode 57, In the Wrong World. We already had several episodes about string theory and related topics about quantum gravity. So one episode was about why quantum gravity theories are so hard to find, what's the problem there. Then we had one episode about the holographic duality, which is a principle which we will talk today also about. And then we also had this episode about string theory, where we are talking about what this theory of string theory is, how it works, and why it is so difficult to confirm it. And today we want to dive deeper into that because recently I heard something about Leonard Susskind. He's one of the founders of string theory, and he was on a podcast. He was talking about what he thinks the state of string theory is, and what he believes is the path to continue, and so on. So he was talking about basically he started with this holographic duality, which we also talked about in one episode. And this is basically that instead of describing nature with fields and particles, as we do in quantum field theory, for example, instead of doing that, in quantum gravity, we describe physics to be at the borders of space-time. So physics is described at the borders of space-time. And if you think back to this episode that we talked about, is that you have basically can have a theory in one set of dimensions, and if you go one dimension below, then what you have, the fields and particles that you have in this higher dimensional space are basically at the boundary of this space-time or space in the dimension lower. This was basically the idea, this holographic duality principle. And if you cannot, if this was too short of an introduction to it, I recommend to you to circle back to the episode where I was talking about this holographic duality, and then I think you can easily understand what we are talking about. But either way, what is shown there is that this is basically working only at the boundaries of space-time, but this only works in a so-called anti-de Sitter space. And this anti-de Sitter space is a space that has certain properties, but these properties are not the properties that our space-time, the space-time we live in, has. So the space-time we live in is a so-called, is basically the opposite, a so-called de Sitter space. And in this space, there is no such boundary. And if you think back, there was what I was talking about just right now, this holographic duality, and also what I was talking about then was this ADS CFT correspondence, which is basically ADS is for anti-de Sitter, and CFT is conformal field theory. So what it basically states is this relationship of in an anti-de Sitter space that you can have if you have this lower dimensional space. What you have there at the boundaries of the space-time is in a higher dimensional space is the part which is described by a conformal field theory, by a field theory. And therefore, you can describe what we have in field theories, you can then describe in this anti-de Sitter space as being at the boundaries of this space. And the problem there is that we do not live in an anti-de Sitter space, and therefore, as Leonard Susskind says, we don't live in a world that is described by string theory. And he sees this as a reason to start over. And this was, I think, a little bit controversial because up to now, the idea was, everyone was aware of this fact that we do not live in an anti-de Sitter space, and that this correspondence only corresponds to an anti-de Sitter space. But the idea was that there might be some way to get a similar correspondence for a space that we do live in, so that we might be able to achieve a correspondence of our field theories to one space in which we can, where we say, yeah, we actually live in such a space. We can really describe the physics going on in our world with this space, and then we can combine quantum gravity, quantum mechanics and gravity and have our beautiful theory of quantum gravity. This was the idea up to now, and Susskind now kind of said, yeah, this is not possible. We need to start over. We are not living in a world described by string theory. But what he also said is that string theory is mathematically really precise, and it's a big achievement in that kind of way, and there are many prizes, especially also field medals, which is basically the Nobel Prize for mathematicians, and these have been awarded to people working on these string theoretic topics. So there was a huge progress that was made on that way. Still, it is said, or he states, that he does not believe that we can describe our world using string theory, because we basically are living in a wrong world for that. So what he also says is that the good thing is, so string theory, according to him, was not a complete waste of time. No, because it showed that quantum mechanics and gravity can exist together, can coexist, can exist in a world together, because this was not clear from the beginning. So it was not clear if one could really unite these two theories into one, and string theory showed that this, at least in principle, is possible. Although where it showed that it is possible was not a world that is described by our world, but it showed that this is in principle possible. So we should be able also to find a theory of quantum gravity that describes our world and combines these two theories. So this proof of existence could be made by string theory, and this might seem a little, but actually that's a lot, because oftentimes the greatest thing, or the most difficult thing to prove, is that something exists at all, that something can exist at all. And to have shown that quantum mechanics and gravity can exist together, can be combined to a theory of quantum gravity, is already a huge part in the step towards such a theory. Therefore, he explicitly states that that is not that is a lot what has been achieved with this. However, of course, he still maintains that we are living in the wrong world to be described by string theory, and that one needs to start over to come to a theory of quantum gravity that really describes our universe. Okay, time for a short break. In these breaks, I usually make some announcement, as you are used to by now. And I think one announcement is that this post that I was talking about in one of the episodes about the consistent histories interpretation, this is now on my Substack, so you can read all about that. Also, if you are also following the German Substack, then you just stay updated about it, because there might be some changes over the holidays. So over the holidays I will take some time, consider how to continue with the podcast, with my Substack and so on, and also with my writing. So there will be some changes probably, and I will announce them once I made them. So really keep updated there. And if you are interested in reading my books, then I really can recommend to you my book Sci-Faith, The Compatibility of Science and Faith. This is available as an ebook in English, so I really recommend you to get that. And if you want to read a novel, then I really recommend to you Alien Thoughts, my first novel, a science fiction novel, so you can read all about that. It's also available as an ebook, so I recommend you to get that one. And really, if you have read those books and you really enjoyed them, then I really would like if you could give a short review, either just a 5-star review, or just you can also write something about it, what you found find especially intriguing, what you like the most, and so on. I really like to hear your feedback and get to know what you think of my work. And also I have this book, the Odysseus-Liste, which is right now only available in German. It's a crime novel, and in the coming year I really plan to translate this also into the English language. If you would be interested in this, then just let me know, then I will try to speed up this process and try to get this available to you also. But I think what we can learn from that is that we basically created a theory which describes the wrong world, the world that we are not living in. And in one sense, that's really fascinating, that with our mathematic formula, with our scientific findings and so on, which we of course get from this world that we live in, we can abstract it so much that we can start to describe worlds that we do not even live in, that are not even the worlds that we are living, from which we actually got these equations and these formulas and so on. So on the one hand, that is really fascinating, but I think on the other hand, it's also showing on the state philosophically where science is in, because I don't want to open this argument again about whether the science or physics is in a crisis or not. Some believe it to be so, others do not. But if you would consider it to be in a crisis, then the question is, where does it come about? And everyone has its own answer why science is in this crisis. Some say, okay, it's about the administration of the universities and about string theory getting too much funding and so on, and many different things. But I think if you look closer, if there is a crisis, I think it has to be something deeper. It has to be something in the worldview of scientists, of those who do science, to really understand why this can be, that so many scientists from all kinds of different countries and so on can all be in this on the same theory who seems to be wrong or something like that. If this is really something that shows to a crisis, then I think there needs to be something deeper going on there. And I think it is part of what we talked about in the last episode, where we basically saw that this world that worldview that we still, or that still many scientists saw, that we live in this clockwork universe where everything is deterministic, where everything is basically determined and nothing, there's no free will and there's no wiggle room or something like that, and where we play no part in it, we are just the neutral spectators and not a central role in this universe. I think that this worldview is still maintained, although quantum mechanics seem to shed a completely different light in the world, seems to lead to a completely different worldview. I think this might be a reason why in some branches of science people seem to be stuck and are not able to continue or get into theories which are beautiful, which are really powerful, which are able to describe a lot of things and do a lot of things, bring about a lot of breakthroughs in mathematics and so on, but in the end are just describing the wrong world. So I think this is what one can trace it back to. And I think as long as we do not come to this place where we accept this new worldview and allow for the humans to have a central role in the universe and not just be the neutral spectators, and for this effect that basically the world is only as it is by us observing it, as quantum mechanics clearly shows, I think only when we accept this new worldview where this world is not just a machine, but where there is indeterminism going on, and there is things that cannot be known, that are set to probabilities and so on. I think unless we accept that, also in our worldview, not just in our physical equations, because quantum mechanics is everywhere in these equations. That's not what I'm saying, but also in the worldview we take behind it. If you don't accept that, I think we will, in some sense, remain stuck and are not able to continue, or we will end up again and again in describing the wrong world and not the one we do live in. And that does not mean that you have to accept the Christian faith completely to get to new theories. That's not what I'm saying, but I think what basically science has shown, what quantum mechanics has shown, is that this worldview of the people after Newton and so on, where the world was just a machine and that we are just machines and that there's nothing special about us. I think this worldview has been disproven by quantum mechanics, and I think if we do not accept a new worldview where we consider these facts, that this is not the case, that we are not just machines, that there is more to humans than just this materialistic body and so on. I think as long as we are not able to accept that, we cannot come to new theories that describe the universe that we experience, that really describe the world that we live in and not some other world. I think as long as we do not do this, this won't be able to make much progress in that area. And also because, as in the last episode we saw that there is a limit to science, I think this is also what quantum mechanics shows, that there is a limit to science and there's something beyond the material, something beyond science. And I think as long as we are not able to accept this fact, we will try to describe in our theories things which we actually are not able to describe. I think that's also a part of the problem. What Leonard Susskind then also talks about is this string theory landscape. In this, he also states that string theory basically it's not one theory that describes one world, but rather it is a framework to describe basically infinitely many worlds, not infinitely many. So today one assumes about 10 to the 500 worlds that can be described by this, depending on how you set the parameters in this theory. And this is called the landscape, that you have basically all this many worlds that you can describe with string theory. And I think this shows also how difficult it is to find physics, the physics to describe reality. We have physics to describe all kinds of realities which are not our own. And I think the difficulty to describe reality, the reality in which we live, is connected to this reluctance to accept reality as, since quantum mechanics, we have seen it seems to be, and that we have a part in this reality, that our observing this reality makes it what it actually is. So that's everything for today's episode. I hope you liked it and you enjoyed each part of it. If you want to get in touch with me or discuss a topic or want to give me some feedback, then feel free to contact me using the contact form on my website, sci-faith.de/en. And there you can go to the contact tab and contact me. And if you have any other things or episodes you want to have covered there, or topics you want to have covered, feel free to contact me there. Also, if you are not yet familiar with the format in which this podcast is produced, let me just briefly explain it to you. So there always at the beginning of a month or of a block, there is a big block of 4 episodes in one thing. It's kind of like a preview, which I call it, where you have the next 4 episodes all in one episode together, combined. And this is for people who like to hear long format podcasts, who have a long way to work or something else, where they can listen to a long episode and can then have a preview of the next 4 episodes all at once, and are completely up to date from the beginning of the blog. For those who like their episodes shorter, who prefer it if they have a half an hour or even less of a podcast episode, for those there is every week afterwards will appear a podcast episode almost in that length, and this way I can publish every week a new podcast every episode, and everyone can have it his own way, either once a month a long chunk of content, or once a week a shorter format podcast episode. So I think that's the best way for everyone, and also for me when I'm producing it. Please also note that this is an independent podcast, which means that it is recorded, produced, and marketed by me. So I really need your support in this. So if you like this podcast, then give it a 5-star rating. And if you have the time, even write a review to it. This just helps other listeners to become aware of this podcast, and then people who might be interested in this content can become aware of it. Also, if you have friends who you think would like this content, then recommend it to them and share it with them. Also, you can support me in other ways, for example by reading my blog and subscribing to my newsletter, or even by reading my books, which you can find on Amazon. For example, there is my latest novel out now is Alien Thoughts, which is pretty entertaining from the feedback that I gotten, and so it's also in some way related to science and faith. The topic of it is also in there, but of course you can also read the book to this podcast, Sci-Faith, The Compatibility of Science and Faith, which is also available in English since last year. Thank you for that, and now I wish you a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward for you to tune in again next time.